Welcome to Empowerment Solutions. Today, I actually want to talk about a matter of the heart, which is ultimately what relationships are all about. And what I'm going to share with you today can really make all the difference in your relationship. Now, the title is about taking out the drama. And what I'm talking about is the drama triangle. Now, some of you may have heard about this concept before. It's not new, but it's still so relevant. And what the drama triangle is about is that there are three roles we often fall into when we are in a relationship. The first role is the victim role. The second one is the aggressor role. And the third one is the rescuer role. Now, step back for a moment and look at this example. So let's say Sarah and John have been in a relationship for a long time. It's actually a real life experience from my clients. Now, Sarah has trouble at work. She likes what she does, but she really feels underappreciated by her management, and all her really wonderful skills and qualities seem to be just ignored. And so there is a growing sense of frustration and also an inner conflict, because on the one hand, she feels like she wants to stay in the job, but on the other hand, she feels like, I cannot stand being in this energy anymore. So regularly deflated and annoyed, she comes home only to see that the house is in a mess and that she still has to take care of the kids and everything else because her husband is a very busy entrepreneur. Now, when John comes home from work and she's telling him, hey, work was really hard. Again, it was so difficult and so frustrating, and this and that interaction really annoyed me. Well, at the beginning, John said, okay, I hear you, but this is what you need to do. Classic man, I'm going to fix it approach. Well, Sarah didn't do any of it. She was not interested in any of it, and instead was actually just feeling misunderstood, because all she wanted was just to be heard. All she wanted was just to have a little bit of sympathy. Now, John looks at her and feels like, well, she's just weak. I mean, she is lazy. She doesn't do anything that I want her to do. She is really, ultimately to blame. So John becomes more irritated and frustrated with Sarah because she doesn't take his great advice. Now, lo and behold, Sarah feels even more misunderstood and shuts down and looks for some kind of a comfort in her alcohol or chocolate or maybe some friends. And so that triangle of her feeling like a victim, and then him trying to rescue her, and her feeling misunderstood or not really empathized with, and him getting more and more frustrated with her, in the end, it has been so encrusted that when they came to me, they actually were thinking about a divorce. So this triangle has been basically what defined their relationship. Now, have you ever felt like this too? When you think back about your own relationships and you think about the roles you play, especially when you are in conflict with someone. It doesn't have to be with your romantic relationship. It can be also with your kids, or it can be at work. Which role do you think you fall into? Is it more the role of feeling like the victim, feeling powerless, feeling that you really cannot change anything, or maybe even feeling that others are against you? Or do you feel like more, it's up to me. I need to make a change. I need to fix a situation. I need to find a solution because people rely on me? Or do you feel more almost like annoyed by people's weaknesses, annoyed by their vulnerabilities, and go very quickly into some kind of a blame mode? And there is nothing necessarily wrong with the roles you feel you gravitate to. Often they actually come back to what we have learned during our childhood. Some people call this triangle even a trauma response. I find like that it's ultimately something that we have learned that keeps us safer. It's the avoidance of the victim, it's the pleasing of the rescuer, and it's the sense of I want to be in control, I want to have power of the aggressor. So all is somehow driven by certain needs. Now here's another example that is about siblings. So there are two siblings, two sisters. One has a hard time, just comes out of an abusive relationship, doesn't have a job. The other one feels really strong in her life, very driven, very go-getting, and is also very busy. But since she is the one who feels like, well, I have it so much better in life, she says, hey, you know what? You're struggling. Why don't you just visit me for a few days? It's going to change, your perspective. Maybe it's going to lift your moods. Now, there she falls into the rescue mode because she wants to make her, her sibling feel better. Now the sibling comes, is like, oh, wow, this is so nice. Thank you so much for having me. But then the sister who invited her all of a sudden changes her energy because she really doesn't have time. She really is super busy. And she feels that the role of the rescuer becomes a little bit too much. And so she feels almost like, annoyed that now her sister is here for several days. And the more she gets annoyed, the more the sister falls into this very familiar victim role, feeling rejected, feeling misunderstood, feeling like that she's in the way. And the more she falls into that role and even expresses this, the more the sister feels bad herself. And then she goes into the aggression against herself mode, where she feels guilty and blames herself. Why is she such a bad sister? Why can't she just be more generous with this poor thing that obviously needs her help? See, the problem with this triangle, again, rescuer, victim, and aggressor, the problem with this triangle is it's not only happening outside of us, it actually happens inside of us as well. So think back when you were trying to rescue someone and made them feel better. And then you realize that the people that you wanted to help were not really ready for your help, or maybe even rejected your help. And think back how quickly you may have felt annoyed and angry by them. Maybe it's a parent that you always want to just, get healthier, eat better, stop drinking, go out in the world and maybe start dating again or whatever. And then they just sit in their little complacency comfort chair and don't move, and you get annoyed with them. Maybe you're actually even verbally attacking them, and then you see them deflated and you see them feeling bad about yourself, and then immediately you go back and really attack yourself, and you tell yourself, oh, I shouldn't have said this. I'm a terrible child. I mean, how can I do this to them? And that makes you feel even worse about yourself. And then you're listing all your shortcomings about how you have been not really taking well care of your parents or maybe anybody else. And then lo and behold, your inner critic, your inner aggressor makes you feel like the victim. And then you're bouncing back and forth between you victimizing yourself and you victimizing others. In the end, what you realize is that you feel more and more disconnected, not only from the people that you actually want to relate to, but also from yourself. So what I want to share with you is how to break out of this triangle, because this triangle can be so destructive, and it can also bring you on an emotional roller coaster. Just the other day, I was working with a couple who actually were wondering if they should continue to be together or not. And it seemed to me very obvious that he was kind of already out. He already had checked out, and she still wanted to somehow give it her all. But the more he became annoyed with her, trying to understand why he couldn't give this whole relationship another chance, the more she felt sad and small and and not good enough until, she really broke down and cried. Well, he changed his tone then and became more in the role of the comforter and tried to find a solution and just also processed that he actually loves her and he is really someone who does not want to lose her, which made her feel better for a second, but it also made her feel confused because wasn't he just showing that he's not interested in continuing the relationship? And so when he became the one who wanted to make her feel better, she became actually angry at him and lashed out and all of a sudden had all this frustration. And then she became the aggressor. And then he, moved into the role of the victim and felt terrible about, that she was just beating up on him, and he became more and more quiet and more kind of a little shell of himself. And so within an hour and a half, this couple went through all these 3 roles. And it was really interesting to watch how they became even confused about themselves because they couldn't understand, how can I feel all these different feelings and have all these different perspectives in such a short amount of time. So then when I explained to them this triangle, they understood, wow, they just got into this vortex. It's a little bit the relationship Bermuda Triangle, and they got lost in it. So how do you get out of it? What do you need to do to not find yourself again in that role? And I think what's really important is to have the awareness. Have, first of all, the awareness when you're about to slide into this. And my wife is really good in that because, of course, me and her had plenty of times in the go around, in the victim cycle, in this victim triangle. And my wife, when I go more into the aggressor mode, always says, I'm not fighting with you. You have all right to be frustrated, but I'm not fighting with you. That's not really getting me anywhere. And that immediately stopped that, slippery slope of going into this conflict. And it makes you realize, oh, wait a second, I took on a role that I actually had learned from my father, who was an excellent aggressor and unfortunately scared the hell out of everyone. So there was a role that somehow I copied and pasted in my mind and didn't really want to play, and I didn't want to really relate to my wife like that. So it was a good reminder. So having awareness is really the first step. Just stepping back and noticing this is about what's happening. I'm feeling either like a victim. The feelings are typical. As I said, you're more feeling everyone is against you. You feel like you have no options. You feel like somehow blaming others, but also shaming yourself for being so flawed or not really deserving change or not really feeling like that anyone cares. So it's a very, very small place you find yourself in. And often in the victim role, you find yourself also very attached to your story, attached to that feeling bad. And you're more arguing for why you are right to feel the way you're feeling than actually wanting to have solutions or wanting to have any change. And when you know this is how you feel in a relationship, that's the role I'm playing right now. And when you're in the rescue role, you feel like that you are responsible, that someone else's misery is your responsibility to fix and to help. And deep inside, you also want something in return. Because I have been playing the role of the rescuer really brilliantly for most of my life. And deep inside, I had to come to the conclusion that I'm not Mother Teresa and that I'm not really better than anybody else, but that actually I had learned early in my life by rescuing others, I am getting something in return. I'm getting love, I'm getting appreciation, I'm getting validation, I can be the hero for a day. And sometimes I may actually even have someone take care of me. That's kind of what I was hoping for. Didn't really always happen. And that created then more frustration. But deep inside, the rescuer doesn't just do it because of the goodness of their hearts. There is also an agenda. There is a need. There is a hope. and there is a want that drives the rescuer. And sometimes it's just also the need to just have the other person feel good, because as a rescuer, you cannot really deal with someone crying or someone struggling because you don't like it. It makes you feel uncomfortable. It makes you feel also look at your own pains, and you don't like to look at your own pain. And that is very similar to the aggressor. See, the aggressor in many ways is kind of the victim in disguise, because the aggressor also feels pretty powerless. When the aggressor sees the victim in that little pity place, the aggressor gets mad, because that's the place the aggressor never ever wants to be in. Because there's one thing the aggressor doesn't like, which is to be out of control, which is to feel small, which is to feel without power. The aggressor doesn't feel safe in the world. The aggressor usually doesn't trust other people. And so if the aggressor sees the weakness in others, it immediately goes back to itself and distances itself from that vulnerability, because the aggressor doesn't really like or acknowledge its own vulnerability. So it's much easier just to shame and blame and push away the other person that is representing exactly that, what the aggressor is the most afraid of. The rescuer is fiercely independent. And if it's about, the attachment theory, you could say the aggressor usually is the one that is avoiding attachment than really allowing attachment to be. And so then okay, so if I feel any of those things, I actually am probably not in a place to have a really healthy connection, a healthy discourse in my relationship. I probably have to take a moment, take a breath, maybe even take a time out and say, okay, hold a minute. Like my wife has been putting up boundaries. You can have a boundary with yourself and say, I'm in this really mode of just wanting to judge you and be frustrated with you. That's not good. Let me just step back and really connect to maybe a different part of me, maybe a part of me that has more compassion, or a part of me that is more patient, or maybe a part of me that just realizes, hey, I'm actually scared of you feeling weak because I need you to be strong, and that's why I want to attack you. Or as a rescuer, just realizing also that, it's not very kind of me when I try to rescue you, because what I'm basically saying to the victim is, well, I need to rescue you because you really need rescuing. You're really flawed. You cannot help yourself. And it's unkind because it doesn't give the victim the feeling that they can believe in themselves or that they have their own strengths. It gives the victim the feeling that they're actually dependent. And that is one of the reasons for codependency. So as a rescuer, you can also say, no, my job is not to now make you feel even worse because you think I need to, carry you out of the ditch. My job is simply maybe to listen, to know that I have your back, to know that I believe in you. And that's a much better help than immediately trying to find some repair. And then when you're the victim and you feel really low, just also have a clear boundary and say, I don't want to go in this place where I feel that everyone is now either responsible for me or everyone is against me. I'm just going to also have more the sense of self-compassion and really notice what's behind the pain I'm feeling. Why am I so paralyzed? Why do I feel like I have no options? And how can I be more aware of that this is probably not true? So this is where you have your inner boundaries. This is where you have awareness. And this is also where you're choosing to say, there must be another way. I can actually look for a more empowering way. And there is a triangle of empowerment. There is a way to switch this all around. And it starts, let's say, again, with the victim to see that when I'm in this victim mode, ultimately, this is the most disempowering way because I'm telling myself there is really nothing I can do. And the answer of getting out of victim mode is self-responsibility. It is literally saying to yourself that I am not without options. The affirmations can be like, I can always learn and grow and improve with and through the challenges I'm facing. And when you're in this victim mode, it is not only something that is affecting your relationship, it is also affecting all aspects of your life, because it's probably something that you do to yourself more frequently than not. And you may have denied yourself many, many times out of this habit of being in this victim role opportunities to make your life more joyful, to go after something that you really would love to pursue, maybe even find your passion or purpose. So taking self-responsibility and asking yourself, what can I do to make myself feel better, to make my life better, to be the creator of my circumstances? That is a very important and empowering step for the victim. And you can, of course, always ask for support. Sometimes you need someone who gives you, a sense of direction, or who believes in you and doesn't necessarily only believe in your story, but sees beyond it. And so it's important for the victim not just to say, oh God, it's all up to me, but also say, yeah, I want to change this. I just don't know exactly how to do it, but I want to take self-responsibility. I don't want to be fixed. I want to grow. So out of the victim role into the self-responsibility role, so that you can be the creator of reality, of your reality. And the creation of the reality really always starts with how we think, and how we think about ourselves, how we think about a situation, how we frame it. That is usually how we start changing our reality. So then there is the aggressor, and the aggressor needs to find self-compassion, because ultimately it's the self-compassion that is missing to have compassion for others. When you're in the aggressor mode and the judger mode, as I said before, you are probably so afraid of feeling like the victim, of feeling that small and powerless, that you are feeling more comfortable being the opposite and actually taking power from them than having compassion for them. And the reason for this is why? That you had never had the courage and also that compassion for your own pains, your own fears, your own vulnerabilities. So as the one who has been more finding themselves in that frustration, irritation, impatience with others, just really understand that I need to really have a look inside and ask myself why. And then I have to also understand that why is probably that I didn't allow myself to feel these feelings. I didn't allow myself to ever be the victim. I didn't allow myself to acknowledge what traumas or pains I went through. And so I need to also ask maybe for help, or ask myself, what is it what still is aching and making me scared of my own sensitivity, of my own vulnerability, and how can I heal it? But then as a next step, there is also something empowering that the aggressor can bring to the table, because the aggressor can also be the one who is challenging the victim with truth and with honesty about those stories and about that what the victim has been telling themselves, without blame and judgment. But since the aggressor has probably told themselves another story over and over again and said, no, I'm not a victim of this, and whatever my father did to me doesn't really matter, and I can do better than this. And since there is a certain kind of strength in wanting to be in control, there is also an ability to be able to see a much more empowering and self-reliant perspective on any situation than the victim may have had in the past. So see the role of the aggressor in the future in a more empowering way as the one who can actually give a new perspective, who can challenge old beliefs or old limiting ways of looking at a situation or looking at themselves, and this way help the victim to feel more empowered and also find a much more connected and empowering way to relate. And then when you are in this rescuer mode, and this is something that you have been maybe falling into all the time, the key to find a more empowering way to relate to others is to have self-commitment and to really realize what you are basically doing is to avoid taking care of yourself, and you're giving to others so that they eventually give back to you what you have been denying yourself. And for me, it was certainly a sense of self-love. I rather wanted to be loved and appreciated from others than actually doing the work and learning to love and appreciate myself. And that's something that I saw my mother do. That is something I saw my aunt do. So there are things that I just had been deeply imprinted in myself that eventually I realized doesn't really create healthy relationships. And it certainly doesn't create a healthy relationship with myself. So also realizing as a rescuer that your job is to take care of yourself and not call self-care selfish or frivolous or something that you just should always put at the bottom of your list, but that it's actually something that is not only serving yourself, but it's also serving others, because then you're not falling into this need to give to others, even if they don't necessarily want to be given to. You don't have to put an old lady across the street because maybe she doesn't want to be across the street just to make yourself feel better. You're telling yourself, no, I will not be the rescuer. I will actually be the coach. I will be the empowerment coach for the people I'm around. And as the empowerment coach, I simply show people that I believe that they have the strength and the resources to be able to change whatever they need to change, to overcome their obstacles, to reach their goals. And that is way more empowering. It's a little bit like, instead of giving people something to eat, you're teaching them how to fish. You are, as that new coach in that triangle, the one that gives people that sense of, yes, I can do it. It's possible. And maybe point out how they already in the past have shown that they have the resources, that they have the abilities, that they know how. They just haven't really had consistently either put the effort for or consistently believed in it. So as that coach, you can hold the belief, you can hold the consciousness for them to become what you know is possible for them, but you're not doing it for them. So there is now, instead of being the rescuer, you're the coach. Instead of being the victim, you take self-responsibility, and you are taking also that sense of, I can be the creator of my own reality serious. And instead of being the aggressor, you're shifting into being much more compassionate, but also much more honest to yourself and others, truth teller who can help people to see things from a different perspective. And when you take that in, think about it for a moment. How would some of those difficult and maybe drama-fueled relationship of yours change? How can you simply, by shifting yourself, help to also shift the relationship? So just to summarize, if you are in this drama triangle and you are not giving up on the other person, but you actually want to have a deeper connection, a more empowering connection, a more meaningful connection, simply be aware when you're falling in these old patterns. Maybe you want to call them out, maybe you want to call attention to them, but step back, ask yourself first which role you are about to take or you have been taking, and then attend to the need of that role, attend to what's really underneath it, and then for the relationship and for yourself, step up as the one who says, I'm sorry that I was in the victim mode. I'm sorry that I was in that rescuer mode, or I'm sorry that I was so uncomfortable with your discomfort and you feeling small and that I was actually attacking you rather than uplifting you. And when you're coming from this compassion and self-responsibility and commitment and openness and honesty, your relationship's going to thrive. It is work. Any relationship is work, unless we are just settling for eating nachos and watching Netflix all day. Well, then a relationship is fairly easy because it's dead. It's numb. We are perfectly fine vegetating next to each other. But if you really want to have a fulfilling relationship, you have to put the work in. And this triangle may be the key. Shifting out of the drama into the empowerment triangle may be the key for you to lift yourself and the relationship to a much higher level of joy, purpose, and fulfillment. Well, I hope this helped you, and I hope this gives you a little bit also some food for thought. So when you go out and interact with others, just notice what role you're playing. See that there is a way for you to be different. Point out to others that you're close to what role they may have been playing and how they can also shift that. And if you need further help, read my book, The Empowerment Solution. All of this and how to get these keys of self-empowerment through step-by-step plans is in that book. And it's also an audiobook that I read, so you can certainly also just listen to it and go through these exercises that sometimes really go also deep into your subconscious. So do that, press the like button, sign up for my Instagram and also for YouTube if you were so kind. And I'm happy to answer all the questions that you may just write down in the comment section, or also if you want to DM me, I'm always available. So reach out and I will talk more about empowering topics. Take care. Hi, Dr. Friedemann here. Thank you for tuning into my YouTube channel. If you're interested in learning more about fear and anxiety, here you'll find guided meditations, webinars, and interviews with some of the most renowned experts in the field of empowerment. Delve into the over 230 videos and more to come every week.